Fahim Saleh was born on the 12th of December 1986 in Mecca, Saudi Arabia, to Bangladeshi parents who frequently relocated for work, before eventually settling in Rochester, New York, with his parents and two sisters, Rif and Ruba. As a child, Fahim proved to be quite naughty and was once caught scratching his neighbour's car with a rock. His parents had to use up most of the family's savings to fix it, and he recalled his mother crying because now they had insufficient funds and would have to return to Bangladesh. Fortunately, his father was offered a job at the local university the next day, teaching computer science, and from this point on, Fahim decided to straighten himself out and was set on beginning to earn money himself. Fahim was a very gifted child, and he had big aspirations from the off. He really did have the potential to become as big as Mark Zuckerberg, and it seemed as though he was heading that way. Fahim was a gifted entrepreneur. He had taught himself to program at a very young age, which was a big advantage and moneymaker for him later on. Fahim created a variety of online projects, such as a website for his family. His first website was salehfamily.com, hosted on AOL Hometown. When his parents threw family parties, his father asked relatives to visit the website for more information. His second venture was made when he was still in high school and only 15 years old. He began experimenting with programming and built teenhangout.com, a social networking site. After he asked all his friends to publish articles, it became a community-oriented blogging forum. Through a lot of site trial and error, he started making $2 to $3 a month from ads featured on his site. Over the next couple of years while still in school, Fahim was eventually generating $100,000 to $150,000 in profit from websites that catered to a young demographic. Around this time, Fahim also launched perhaps one of his most famous services, Prank Dial, which allowed users to send pre-recorded prank calls to their friends. This went on to generate over $10 million in business. However, it did lead to Fahim getting into trouble and led to him being sued by a former prison guard, Kirk Eder, the former deputy director of Hudson County Correctional Facility, who was jailed for 21 months in 2015 on charges of wiretapping. Fahim didn't want this to define him though. He was quoted as saying that he wanted to create something that adds legitimate value to humanity. After high school, Fahim went on to graduate from Massachusetts Bentley University, a private university focused on business studies, where Fahim earned a degree in computer science. He used his income from Prank Dial to fund his further ventures. Prank Dial was somewhat controversial because it was abused as a tool for harassment, and Fahim felt that he could do better than this. He felt that he could create something that didn't exploit people or work towards someone else's disadvantage. He eventually went on to co-found the ride company Patheo, which was popular in Bangladesh and Nepal in 2015. He realised that for busy commercial cities in the world, where workers were always in a rush to get to work, that a bike-hailing service would bring some sort of ease into the system. Patheo was an on-demand digital platform and vehicle for hire, with a fleet of motorcycles and bicycles. As of April of 2018, this company was valued at $100 million. Fahim used his newfound wealth to invest in many other companies of a similar nature, involving vehicles for hire and ride-sharing apps. Fahim's friends called him the Elon Musk of the developing world, and he soon earned himself a wealth of $150 million. In 2017, Fahim co-founded the ride-hailing company Gokada, a bike-hailing company that was based in Nigeria. By 2019, the company had acquired approximately 1,000 motorcycles and completed nearly 1 million rides. In 2020, Gokada faced severe setbacks after being banned by the Nigerian government under a clampdown on motorcycles. It was forced to lay off staff and pivot from being a ride-sharing service to a delivery courier. The ban came at a difficult moment for Gokada, which had just raised $5.3 million in funding from Rise Capital, a Silicon Valley-based venture capital firm, in May of 2019. After the ban was enacted, the firm stopped bringing in money, and around 800 bikers working for Gokada were also immediately laid off. While the company began as a ride-hailing service, it has since become a leader in food and parcel delivery. In June of 2021, Gokada announced it had surpassed $100 million in annual transaction value and had completed over 1 million food delivery and e-commerce orders for over 30,000 merchants in just 12 months. Around the time of kickstarting Gokada, Fahim was a busy man with a tight schedule, and so it seemed necessary that he hired a personal assistant to keep his finances and diary in line. He needed someone who could keep up with his fast-paced lifestyle and eager investments, and so it seemed that he had hit the jackpot when he hired 20-year-old Tyrese Haspil, who had got the job after applying online. Fahim trusted Tyrese and saw something in him where most people found an impenetrable wall. Fahim was also fond of the idea of taking chances on young and unproven talent. Tyrese had not had an easy start to life. He had lived with his Aunt Marjorie since the age of 12 after the death of his grandmother, who had taken the boy in years earlier when his mother had ended up in a mental institution. But Marjorie couldn't provide his forever home, and at 17, Tyrese once again cut roots and finished his youth in foster care. From this, you can imagine how he must have felt to have achieved the opportunity just 3 years later to be working alongside one of the most budding entrepreneurs in the US as an executive assistant that handled Fahim's finances and personal matters. On top of this, Fahim had also put Tyrese on a very generous wage that allowed him to pay off many of his family's debts. Unfortunately, for some reason, what could have been a lifelong friendship between the two turned into a very sinister turn of events. Once Tyrese had begun working with Fahim, he had become obsessed with the CEO's jet-setting lifestyle. Tyrese had begun to steal from his boss, signed emails to associates with the title Chief of Staff, and hosted friends at Fahim's apartment and passed off the apartment as his own without Fahim knowing, whilst Fahim was spending more time abroad busy with his startups. When Tyrese took Fahim's dog Layla to her grooming appointments in the West Village, he had even registered the pet as his own. Sometime in early 2020, Fahim Saleh made a devastating discovery. The assistant he thought he knew had been secretly stealing money from him over the course of 3 years. This amount had accumulated to over $90,000, and when confronted, Tyrese, who was now 22 years old, denied the allegations, but Fahim didn't want to hear of it. He fired his assistant and told him that he would not go to the police if he returned every last penny. As if this wasn't reasonable enough, Fahim knew that Tyrese more than likely had spent most, if not all, of the money, and would not be able to pay him back all at once. So Fahim arranged a payment plan so Tyrese could return the stolen money in stages. Fahim didn't have to do this for Tyrese, but it shows what a kind person he was. He had chosen not to go straight to the police like most would have done at such a betrayal, as he didn't want Tyrese to get arrested. In 2019, Fahim had purchased a newly built 3-floor duplex located on East Houston Street in Manhattan's Lower East Side for $2.25 million. In the early afternoon of July the 13th, 2020, Fahim would enter his luxury building for the last time. On this evening, neighbours had heard yelling coming from Fahim's unit and contacted his sister. After her attempts to contact him failed, she visited his condo and found a scene that could only be described as the stuff of nightmares. The headless body of Fahim Saleh lay dead in the living room of the apartment that he had loved so much. Fahim's sister called police, who found his torso next to an electric saw with his head and limbs in garbage bags elsewhere in the apartment. An autopsy report from the chief medical examiner concluded that Fahim had died from multiple stab wounds to the neck and torso. Detectives suspect that the killer had fled from the scene through the back door after Fahim's sister arrived looking for him and had interrupted of them trying to dispose of Fahim's body. Investigators suggest that the killer had waited overnight for the blood to coagulate in the body before dismembering it with a power saw. CCTV taken from the apartment complex would lay out the very disturbing crime on camera. The surveillance video showed Fahim getting into the elevator in his apartment building that day, with a man trailing behind him onto the same elevator. This man had been wearing a mask and was dressed in a black three-piece suit with latex gloves and a duffel bag, whilst Fahim's face appeared puzzled. They had reached the 7th floor together, and at approximately 1:44 p.m, the last moment recorded before the doors close, is the killer zapping Fahim with a taser. Fahim falls to the floor, and the masked man then drags Fahim inside his apartment. The Chief Medical Examiner's Office described Fahim's injuries as 5 stab wounds to the neck and torso, multiple incision wounds to the arm, multiple wounds to the left hand, contusion to the left forehead, 2 lesions on the back, and the body had been dismembered and decapitated just below the knees, both shoulders and the neck. Just 2 days after tech millionaire Fahim Saleh was murdered and dismembered in his luxury Lower East Side apartment, his trusted employee, Tyrese Haspil, was ready to party. A shocking series of CCTV videos caught a seemingly carefree Haspil and a mystery female companion strolling through NoHo just a mile from the crime scene, and even picking up a bouquet of birthday balloons allegedly on his dead boss's credit card. As investigators were sifting through the horrific crime scene for clues, Haspil also allegedly decided that some rest and relaxation was in order. He rented out a loft-like Airbnb just across Lower Manhattan that was priced at $18,000 a month. As cops continued processing evidence throughout the day, particularly a left-behind taser and cleaning supplies, which Tyrese was later found to have purchased at a 23rd Street Home Depot with Fahim's card, Tyrese and his girlfriend came and went from his rented pad. Multiple videos show her walking with Tyrese whilst carrying a leather tote bag from the pricey APC store on Mercer Street. Credit card records show that Tyrese had personally bought the bag, and in another video, the woman gets out of an Uber with Tyrese and is carrying a shopping bag from Christian Louboutin. Tyrese Haspil was arrested the next day, early that Friday morning, after being caught hiding out in the swanky Airbnb on Cosby Street. He was held without bail on charges of second-degree murder. However, he pleaded not guilty. The case against Tyrese was adjourned until January the 11th, 2021. However, no further information is available on the outcome of his trial. The murder of Fahim has devastated many people, including those that had the opportunity to work with him on his many ventures. Hussein M. Elias, who co-founded Patheo with Fahim, said of him, "He saw the promise in us when all we had in common was a purpose and a shared vision. He was and will forever remain an incredible inspiration." The sister of Fahim posted an emotional tribute to her beautiful brother, revealing that his severed head and limbs were sewn back onto his body in time for his funeral.
My family and I will do everything in our power to keep Fahim's memory alive and to keep his visions ongoing. We will also dedicate ourselves to ensure that Fahim gets justice. My brother's death was a crime of the most cruel and heinous nature. The next time you see your brother, please hug him as tightly as you can for as long as you want. Because that's all I want to do every time I see those photos. But I'll never be able to hug Fahim again.
Fahim's other sister Ruba commented, Having come from so little, Fahim had zero interest in being a rich entrepreneur who only hung out with other rich entrepreneurs. His heart was most open to those in need. When talking about Gokada, the motorbike hailing app he had developed in Nigeria, Fahim once said, "These drivers depend on me." Just as he had once been determined to ease his own father's hardships, he later dedicated himself to easing the hardships of countless others.
Hey guys, if you don't already know me, I'm Fahim Saleh, the CEO of Gokada. They just need the opportunity to shine. And the drivers that were at Gokada, every one of them wasn't there because they just wanted to make money. They were there because they had families. They had children, they had dreams. They wanted to start businesses, they wanted to go to school. They had degrees already, but they couldn't find jobs. For many, Gokada wasn't the final place for their lives. It was a stepping stone to get to that next endeavor. It's my dad.
Surprise!
It's an Uber. It's the new car.
तुम्हें ये